I'm going to share my screen. All right, can people see my screen? Since I've been bad of late.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've been really bad of late of just starting and not paying attention to these things. So I apologize. Thank you, Lisa, for keeping me honest and um, pester me if people have questions. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat. Lisa can remind me if I don't see them. So, I think most people know who I am, but for the benefit of anyone who doesn't, Scott Quimby, Acture, been doing this 47 years, last March. Started beginning of the beginning. I'm a certified information system security professional, CISSP. We have another, Cole Fowler, my partner in security crime, and we have a whole stable of others with various security degrees or working towards degrees. So I'm very proud of that. Virtual Chief Information Security Officer, so that's where I get to freak out about stuff. When CSI joined Acture, that's when I joined Acture. So that's me. Going to talk about what I can talk about two recent events, major events, in my opinion, and lessons learned. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you the intimate things, but they do illustrate what I've been talking about um, of late. Well, last couple of years anyway. So we had an event a couple of weeks ago, two and a half weeks ago, and this event was caused, in my professional opinion, by bad computer hygiene. Site, they had a SOC, they had the base Sentinel-1 instance deployed multiple locations, and they got ransomware. And so you go, well, what's up with that? Sentinel-1 is, best of breed product. They had a SOC. They, they had many, at least a few of the things we would suggest. What's up with that? Well, what they had, and we've talked about this forever, is they had an open VPN tunnel to a third-party provider that they didn't manage that got hacked. So the third-party provider ran right in through the tunnel into their network. And basically, when they came out of the tunnel in the network, the SOC lit up, said lateral movement, bad things incoming, but then it went dark and none of the agents went off. Well, the reason for that, quite simply, was that these people had great difficulty having coverage everywhere. So they had gaps. They had gaps in equipment that they owned. But worse than that, they allowed their staff to put their devices, personal devices, on the inside of the network. So they had all these unmanaged devices with either minimal protection or no protection on their network. And so the threat actors, when they ran in, they found all sorts of really cool places that they could hang out, and they could basically set up shop that were completely invisible to the SOC. They weren't going, they set the SOC saw them come in, but then lost track of them. And so what they found is unmanaged devices. They set up shop on unmanaged devices. Now, the question I had, and to the incident response team, I said, well, why didn't Sentinel-1 light up, even though it was a basic product? A very bad thing.exe, that ransomware payload should have lit up. Why didn't it light up? Well, the reason is, and it's something I talked about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, What they did is they set up shop on an unmanaged machine, complete blind spot on the network. And then instead of going and dropping payloads onto the devices, which were lit up, they UNC'd in all the devices, and they UNC'd in all the devices, and they encrypted underneath. So they were eaten from underneath, and they were dead. Multiple locations, they were dead. And when they were found the next morning, they were basically attempting to go after the backup. So we had threat actors with what seems to be domain admin access, at least overnight. Now, from a practical standpoint, 6 to 8 hours of domain admin, you're toast. And that's what happened here. And you turn around and say, how could this have been prevented? Well, the higher end tools like SentinelOne Complete with our CSCDR offering, that with the high end deep vigilance, it looks more around corners. It looks more sideways. There's more cross communication as to things that's seen. But the biggest thing, quite frankly, was they let unmanaged machines into their network. They let an unmanaged vendor mainline into their network as opposed to be targeted to, what you only need to see this, or we only need to see this. This was entirely avoidable. It really was. So message, and I know some of you got this going on. I've talked to you, teachers put their personal stuff on the inside of your network. Or the superintendent refuses to follow the rules and puts their Android phone or their personal Mac or whatever on the inside. This is a death wish, right? This is a death wish because you're going to give the attackers a blind spot, and that's what they're looking for, blind spot in time. Now, the other thing is the more advanced SOC services would have seen this cross traffic as well, even though the agents weren't going off. It goes back to, living off the land, tiptoeing around, your defenses. They would have the advanced SOC services, the overarching SOC services would have seen this. A Blackpoint would have seen this, a Blue Shift would have seen this, a Pondurance at the high end of those SOC offerings would have seen this traffic, and they wouldn't be dead. So this is just hygiene, stupid stuff that we harp on all the time. And, an unmanaged third-party vendor with access. I got after a bunch of you with this Envision payroll contractor stuff where you issued VPN, multiple districts issued VPN connections to the provider from an unmanaged machine outside your district. They came in to get a specific IP to go back to the RIC to do Envision, and it was an any rule, and they don't need an any rule. They don't have any reason to see into your network. They just need one IP to legitimately do their job securely that you're contracting them to do. Hopefully, if this is you've dealt with this, because that's just as bad as this scenario, right? You're just waiting to die. An unmanaged machine mainlined into your network is very bad. Same reason why we don't want to put VPN clients on staff-owned machines. If that you want a VPN client, you want it to be on a machine you manage, that you patch, that you look for vulnerabilities. That's that one. Bad hygiene equals death. This is the other one, and this is actually still ongoing. Don't know the exact outcome, but again, I will tell you the story. We talk about MFA, and you need MFA, and you should do MFA, and this is a site that actually I've called out as being one of the more exemplary sites at doing MFA for cloud-based access, in this case, Microsoft 365. Um, they really were excellent at uh, deploying this. But, we started out, the FBI, Microsoft was like, MFA is 99% effective. Well, now we're down to like 97%. And I've talked about in other meetings that what's going on. Well, the attackers have shifted gears, and what they're attempting to do is they're attempting to basically sit next to your users in their browsers wherever they are and steal their MFA session tokens. So when I go do our MFA, whatever our MFA thing is that we use Cisco Duo, but there's other things out there. What happens is, you do whatever your prompting is, your code, whatever, your dongle, whatever it is. It creates a session token, and the session token lives on your machine. Microsoft, I said this a year ago when I came back from the Huntress security session in New York City. The session token sits there and says, "Yep, I'm legit. I am I'm good." And so Microsoft has a real problem defending or hardening the session token. If the attacker can be sitting with you in your browser, you're toast. MFA is blunted. That's the 3%, right? That's the 3% that doesn't work. And the attackers have changed their strategies dramatically in light of this to basically focus on anyway, anyhow, getting info stealers out on machines, sitting in browsers with users and snatching that session token. That's kind of the backstory. And if they have the session token, what that session token says is, "Hi, I've already authenticated MFA. You can leave me alone." And that's it. I've talked about that the browser is the Wild West now, about checking your extension, browser extensions, minimizing your extensions, being obsessive about patching, obsessive about DNS filtering, all that stuff. But here it was, a user in a school district, center square. I talk about all this specific targeting of people with money, with personal identifiable information, with confidential information, financial information, all the time. Last time in April, we talked about a superintendent. This time, we're talking about um, a person in the business office dealing with money in a big way, dealing with personally identifiable information in a big way. And they were targeted. So what happened? They got an email from a trusted person, someone they routinely communicate with. It was a trusted person. They don't think anything, getting emails from this person. The email had an attachment. The attachment had a link. The person dealing center square with finance and money and personal information clicked on the link from the trusted person. What was explained to me is the screen flashed white, didn't see anything. They didn't really think much of it. They were busy. They kind of put it aside, went on with their day. That was 1 p.m. yesterday, or 2 days ago, excuse me. At 1:44 p.m., from someplace not there, an MFA transaction happened on this person's account that was successful. Was told there was a flash that there was an MFA thing. They didn't think anything of it. They went on their day, finished their day. Ignorance is bliss. But what happened from 1:44 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. yesterday, is the threat actors from various geographic locations in the United States were bouncing in and out of this person's Microsoft 365 account and um, their OneDrive, examining files. And the opening statement is, I deal with personally identifiable information and financial information. And they were just at it all night. Now, I have to say, for the district, the staff, outstanding detective work in tracking down the who, what, why, when, complete log of the exact files touched, when they were touched, um, no evidence that we could see of mass exfiltration, but they could sit there all night opening files, screenshotting. You don't know what you don't know. So now this is really funky because this is actually the first token theft I have personally been involved with. I read about these, you read about these, but that's what happened. The trusted person targeted the financial person, identifiable information person. They were compromised, sent a link because of the trust. They clicked on the link and they kind of ignored the minor signs that there was something amiss, didn't report, went about their day. Now it's worse because that went through a spam filter that exploded that link and didn't light up. Then that went through a DNS filter that looked at that link and didn't light up. But what have I been talking about? I've been talking about threat actors are buying clean IPs and launching things from clean IPs. So that initial filtering or initial lookup doesn't show up as malicious in a new campaign because it's from a clean server. I talked about that either last time or in January. So that's it. And then the other one I talked about last time with this fast flux is they're flipping across the entire world with servers and flipping the IPs of the servers so fast that they can't be identified. So, layer one, spam filtering, link explosion, sandbox failed. Layer two, DNS filtering initially failed. It came back later and they caught up and they marked it as malicious, but the barn door was already open. Trusted person, spear phishing, target, they went for it. And then the thing that would have seen this, and these folks didn't have that, is if you had an overarching SOC service, um, like Blue Shift, Blackpoint, the high-end Pandorans, they would have seen impossible travel, right? Because you're back to a school district, those people are going to sign up most time between 3 and 5, right? And then all of a sudden you start having impossible travel across the United States or beyond overnight, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Nobody's paying attention. Any of these services would have shut that down, and this wouldn't happen. And you go back to what's defense in depth, layers of protection, right? If one layer fails, in this case, we had 2 layers fail, right? Maybe 3 with the browser. I don't know. I can't evaluate that. But the other layer, a cloud-based monitoring layer, that would have instantly picked it up and instantly killed this. The second they went and did that first login at 144, it would have killed it. It would have been over and nothing would have happened. So, they have to figure out, they know exactly what files were accessed. They got to figure out if there was actually in the files that were accessed stuff to be concerned about. So that's where I left the story. But it's back to defense in depth, layers of protection, layers that if one layer fails or gets taken out, can't see it, that hopefully we're going to see it from another perspective. And any of these cloud monitoring vendors that are looking into Microsoft 365 or looking into Google from the cloud, and we have many, many fine things. And this isn't a marketing presentation. We can talk about that if you want to another time. But with Lisa, happy to do so. But that's what it was. That would have seen it. Impossible Travel would have lit up, and it would have been over before it began. So that's what I can tell you. Um, Fake captcha, we talked about this last time, and it's still going around, it's still big. And so basically, this kind of shows what they're talking about. And in the bottom left, this is the weird thing, that it's actually, they're asking people to paste into a run box. And people are really doing that. To me, that's bizarre, even for non-technical people. Most people, I'm not a robot, we're over, we pick our traffic lights and we're done here. But the fact that this thing is asking you to paste into a run box and basically to effectuate the PowerShell script to do bad things to you is beyond bizarre to me. Now, since we met, there's been a lot of talk, as people shake their head as to why are we even here, that basically what you can do to kind of help your users who are not smart enough not to paste a run command into a run box is you can go into group policy and you can just remove the run box. Now, many of you may do that anyway for students, but if people are kind of not seeing this, maybe you could do it for administrative staff and everyone in general. And it's group policy, start menu, remove run from start menu, enable, and then that step of the fake captcha couldn't be executed. So Lisa has these slides, or will have these slides. Teams was being very mean to me this morning, so I couldn't send them to her. But she has the PDFs, and she'll send that out. The other one that just made the news in the last 2 weeks is this supposed SentinelOne downgrade attack. SentinelOne has the ability to be upgraded on the fly or downgraded on the fly to a better version or a worse version. More simplistic version, should say. The engine's always the same. It's just how far does it see? And what they say is at the point of this transition in versions, a threat actor has the ability to inject very bad things into your network. So the first question that came up is this a thing? I mean, it's a theoretical thing. SentinelOne, we're heavily invested, many of you are. Is this really a threat? And the answer is there's this setting called online authorization or online authentication in your system. And if that is turned on, what it says is nobody does anything without phoning home and being authorized to do it. And in our case of our CSCDR offering, I've checked with our upstream vendors and they have gone through and audited everything. And this was already set to not allow this. But if you're doing SentinelOne on your own or some other methodology, that's the secret setting. And if this is turned off as it's shown here, then in theory, if I initiate an upgrade or a downgrade, there's a spot where bad things can happen. But in our world, it's not. I thought this is funny. My daughter's like watching Mustafa like every weekend. And this is really what it is. Everything in that network, like you guys are responsible for. And it's an attack surface from the Coke machine to the vape detector to the workstation to the browser. So that made me chuckle because that's really true. And this is what keeps me up at night, how to scare a CISO. Every user has admin access. And I'm just besides myself. I wrote some grumpy things on Tech Tidbits in the coming weeks. It's been a pretty depressing time for security, hence why we're having this extra meeting. Um, we're going into summer. Summer is when you can affect change, and nobody needs to be at local admin. This prima donna that the reason they're local admin is because they're going to make a face. Okay, I can't tell you how many times the person that was allowed to be made local admin because they were going to make a face got into something bad, and we gave away half the field to the threat actor because this person was going to make a face. Nobody needs to be a local admin. No user would know if they're local admin once they're set up, except in rare circumstances. All right, we can know district or buildings, administrative staff, superintendents, whomever. Nobody needs to be local admin. We can assign rights to things. We can tweak stuff. Remember, if an threat actor gets local admin, they will eventually get domain admin. It may take a while, but they'll get it. And 6 to 8 hours after they get it, you're dead. I don't want you to be dead. You don't want you to be dead. Let's not give away half the field. Um, and I harp on this, but again, we're going in the summer, and if you haven't done this, do this. It's free, labs. We have that video. There's a link at the end on our website with Austin's masterclass in this. We can certainly help you with this. No two servers or workstations to have the same local admin password. Microsoft's most feared attack is pass the hash. I have the local admin on this machine, so I can just throw the hash at all the other machines and run right across the network. And then they own you. We cannot allow that to happen. We need the attacker, even if they get access on one thing, to have to fight the battle machine by machine to try to move. And hopefully when they fight the battle, they're going to make noise, and we're going to pick up that noise, even in living off the land attacks. Okay, we can help you figure this out. Summer's coming. You have to figure this out. Same thing. I'm shaking my head. We're doing a bunch of security assessments for people. Lisa's doing it. Local firewalls off on all the servers. Local firewalls off on Windows and Mac workstations. There's no reason on earth for local firewalls to be off. Local firewalls are not panacea, but again, it's another thing to slow someone down. It's very, very easy as in the Windows world to programmatically open ports, and in Macs it's not that big a deal. If you need help, you got to get these things turned on. We can programmatically, configure them or whatever. We have to do it. Laptops, anything going off site, you need encryption, right? You lose a laptop, it gets stolen. If it's encrypted, it's gibberish, right? That's not a reportable event if there's stuff on there, and it probably shouldn't be stuff on there to begin with. It's really easy to do. It's built in. If you need help, let us do it. Again, the other bugaboo here, no tech should be local admin, even on their own devices. I've lived for years as a limited admin on this device. Okay, it doesn't mean the tech can't have the local admin ID. I just don't want their production ID where they're sitting there surfing and reading email and doing stuff to have admin privileges, right? If you need admin privileges, let it prompt and then type in whatever the admin ID is and do what you want to do. It's not a question of denying techs access. It's a question of not allowing their machine, which probably is on a VLAN that can see most everything in your district, to have free reign if something bad happens. I make sure and I harp on you guys, and a lot of you guys just won't bite. Turn on UAC, the mother man. It's a prompt for administrative privileges. We can do it programmatically. And again, that UAC prompt is going to block an info stealer, a keyboard logger. It's going to shut down a basic attack. Now, if you're communist China or Russia, you can get around this. But if you're crime of opportunity, ransomware as a service. Again, if it's like work, they're probably going to leave, even if they're not detected. If they're detected, again, an act of defense, basically every time they've dropped off. Um, Again, that's free. Okay. If you need help with that. So this is my machine. If I need something that requires admin access, it prompts me. I put in the other admin credential that's not mine. The act of this breaks any keystroke logger or info stealer, so no one can see it. If you've ever done a remote session where somebody's done this and all of a sudden the screen's blocked out or you're locked out and your mouse and keyboard don't work, that's what I'm talking about here. That's the way to do it. So I haven't denied the text the access. I've just said when you need it, you have a master key to your machine, use it. And when you're just sitting around doing what you do, you're no different than a student. Now, the bonus here is to leverage MFA. MFA on VPN, we're pretty good on that. MFA on cloud logins, increasingly good. But, what I like to do is MFA on all workstation, MFA on, I should say server as well, MFA on all UAC prompts, MFA on safe mode prompts. Remember the traveler's insurance incident where they had MFA, but it failed open if it couldn't reach the MFA host. And then travelers said, we're not going to pay because you said you had MFA all the time, every time, and you didn't. So you got to make sure that MFA on all RDPs, RDP remains the number one basic tool when we see these attacks. They try RDP. If RDP works, they just keep going with it. If it doesn't work, they'll deploy some sort of remote access tool, which again, if you have layered defenses and you have a SOC and you define what the tool set is legitimately in your network and where your tools originate, the SOC will light up without you on these things. Basically, MFA anything you can. With the Cisco dual licenses, you buy them once and you just use it as many times as you can. If you need help with that, let us know. This is a big deal. And we can do conditional access MFA. So I can say, well, the business ed lab computers for students don't MFA to log in. However, if one of the techs comes along with a tech admin or payroll or somebody out of place, administrator, whatever, then it will light up with MFA. So I can create a conditional MFA policy. So kindergartners don't get hassled, but tech admins that come along to do meaningful work will get challenged. So we can do that too. And this is what my machine looks like with MFA. I type in my master key alternative local admin credentials. It prompts me for MFA and I move forward. I talked about this probably once a year. I talk about it, but again, it's summer. Microsoft allows unlimited local admin password attempts, which is bizarre. There's no default lockout policy. So again, that threat actor got on the elementary school library workstation as a limited user. They started as a limited user password spray attack against machines they've identified that they want to try to hack into. And so they're just banging as fast as they can against the local admin credentials to see if, their password hash, rainbow hash dictionaries can break in and give it unlimited opportunity. Sooner or later, they will. The weird thing about this is those attempts are recorded in the local event log. They're not recorded in any of your central event logs. If you go into the local machine that's been under attack, you'll see it in the log, but it's not raising the attention. And I don't think any of us are looking at every local workstation, local server event log. So then it's invisible. But Microsoft added, I don't know, a year and a half ago now, 2 years ago, they added this local group policy. And basically, local group policy allows you to set an administrator, local administrator account lockout policy, much like you have in your network global password policy. And I'm telling you, you need to do this. Now, it is local, which means it's a GP-edited MSC, right? Local group policy, which then will look like group policy management console. However, you can, because all group policies are really registry keys, you could create a GPP to push this out. If you need help with that, do it. But this is still not alerting you on the network. Hey, the elementary school library machine is banging against this machine. Again, a SOC with direct endpoint visibility would see that, right? So they would see that with their agents, and they would report on that. Gold standard of industry reports. One of them is the Verizon DBIR incident response reports. It's one of the most respected reports in the industry on what the heck's going on. Basically, ransomware attacks are getting worse. Ransom pay has been decreased somewhat. It's getting pretty bad out there. Financial gain, again, crimes of opportunity. That's what most of you guys are facing. Multiple attack vectors in the same attack. That's true. Human element, huge factor. Non-malicious human element, right? You click, you got suckered into clicking on stuff. And I got to tell you, and I was trying to find the screen. There's stuff, it's just too perfect. It's too perfect in terms of some of these screens. There's no way your users are going to know. There's no way you're going to know. There's no way I'm going to know. It's going to have to be based on traffic and behavior. The other thing that's going on, and I know people don't like this, and people don't like when I say it in schools, people on staff with access allowing threat actors access for money. Here, I'll give you money if you just like connect to this thing and just let me in. Based on extortion, sextortion. We think we had one of those last year from a high school student. And there's a big breach with Coinbase, the crypto people. And what they believe they've proven there is that Coinbase staff was bribed by the threat actors to let them in. So, you do all these great defenses, you do all this stuff, and then somebody goes dark on you and lets these guys in, and now you're in a firefight. And that goes back to something I've said, and I came back from Columbus Day with the top security minds in the world at the ISC Squared Security Conference. And we changed from everything can be hacked to you will be breached, right? You will be breached. However it happened, bad patch, bad computer hygiene, somebody let something slide, somebody went evil on you, you will be hacked. Someday, somehow, somebody will be standing inside your network that you don't want. No matter how hard you work, no matter how many layers, the question then becomes what happens next. And that's really a question we have to look at. How do we see around corners? How do we see living off the land? How do we see them tiptoeing around your endpoint protection, whatever that is? How do we see that? And the only way to do that is really eyes on glass, right? An overarching SOC, eyes on firewall, right? They came in probably through the firewall. anything bad going on, it's going out through that firewall. Who's eyes on firewall? Who's looking there? All right. Again, stolen credentials, that's huge. Info stealers are the game. Well, I think I had a statistic from Blackpoint a month or two ago. It was 80%. Just walk in. They already have the credentials, you know. Then when you go on the dark web and you look at how many people just keep using the same IDs and the same credentials over and over and over and over again, it doesn't take threat actors very long to figure that out. That's a huge security awareness training thing for you guys. It's an ongoing thing, and people are just keep doing it, keep doing it. Um, Here this is 2 days ago. The median time for a user to fall for a phishing attack is less than 60 seconds. That's what happened. That's yep, yep. Patching, same thing. You know, we're all over the place with patching, right? Third-party patching, OS patching. Um, it's it's the Wild West here, and a whole lot of people are not keeping up. And it's hard too because you look at this Patch Tuesday the other day, right? What they do, they put out a security update that said, "Oh, most of your Windows 10 machines that have BitLocker are gonna reboot and demand the BitLocker key, that really long, nasty key that nobody knows where it is, um, in order to, use the machine." Now, Microsoft just came out with an out-of-band fix for that. But Patch Tuesday, Dead Body Wednesday, we don't want to be there. So most of the time we kind of hold back. But we more and more, they tell you the day zero attacks on Patch Tuesday. Oh, by the way, there seems to be always in the wild day zero attacks. So we have to figure out how to do a better job here. We have some fine solutions for third-party patching, for Windows patching, for vulnerability assessment and patching. You got to figure it out. Most all of you are failing at this. And a few of you aren't. A few of you really, are doing exemplary jobs. But this is hard. This is really hard. And you know, Veeam, you know, everybody wants to get to the backups to try to cripple you for recovery. The first example I gave you, when they were found, they were looking to get at the backups, and the backups held and were good. But, basically, Veeam surveyed 5,000 entities around the world. 12,000 are hit with something in the prior year. Some other news. Google just improved this is just the other day, improved their Google Vault, Google Drive search capabilities. All the links are in the PDF. So again, Lisa can get you the PDFs and the like. Basically, this is crazy, AI. Well, most of AI is just better bots, but AI is starting to become realer in many areas. And Microsoft's comment is, okay, AI, next 2 to 5 years, you're going to have your little AI friend with you, the Copilot. I've talked about how much I use Copilot. A lot of people in Acture use ChatGPT a lot. So basically what Microsoft is doing is they introduced this Entra Agent ID. And it's the concept of your Microsoft AI agents registering and being validated. We talk with email about authoritative DNS and how we go back and we check, people from around the world check your email against your authoritative DNS to prove you're legit. So what Microsoft's doing is saying all these AI agents are going to be authenticated back and that are theirs to be legit, that they're legitimate agents. The other thing I read yesterday is, we talk about DNS, dynamic naming system, looking up websites, server names, workstation names. They're talking about a new standard on ANS, which is essentially agent network service, again, creating a non-Microsoft uh, uh, non-Microsoft universal AI framework so that any supposed AI agent can be validated. That's not in existence yet. That's a proposed standard. This is scary, right? And when I talk to the crypto guys that are the cyber guys that work at many of these SOCs, a lot of them are retired military cyber guys or reserve cyber guys. And I always hear that, they believe that China basically owns our critical infrastructure. And this just came out last week that, China has kind of cornered the market on a lot of the solar panels by subsidizing them, et cetera. And what they've done is they started taking apart solar panels and they're finding uh, cellular radios, kill switches in the American deployed solar panels that, something bad happens with China, they can flip a switch and take out, a substantial part of the solar grid. So now they're going around looking in other things, right? There's talk that the webcams at our ports are, phoning home. Scary, scary stuff. Um, Microsoft is making an initiative to kind of turn any website they have a tool set into an AI application, AI search application. You can read about that there. I talked about this a minute ago. They just came out with the update to fix the Windows 10 mess up. Again, everything is about um, trying to find vulnerabilities, deal with vulnerabilities. Microsoft has announced in Intune that they're going to, in their security Copilot agent, they're going to embed this in Copilot and bring out vulnerabilities. So, you're using Intune to do, Windows Update replacement, you're using it to do app deploy, provisioning, whatever, as an evolution of SCCM and WSIS and all those things. And so what they're saying is they're getting ready, I guess this is in preview, to drop a security Copilot agent in to do some vulnerability scanning. The state of CPU security has never been as bad. So they found yet more holes in the side of Intel processors for the last 6 years. Now they'll try to do a microcode update, which will come out to you as some sort of BIOS update or firmware update or something. But basically just hole in the side of the boat after hole in the side of the boat after hole in the side of the boat. And basically this one, I talked about in a different context. North Korea is, as I said, their favorite thing is to hack Macs. They're doing quite an excellent job of hacking Macs. But the other thing they're very fond of is leveraging IE mode in Edge. And this is the setting in Microsoft Edge. And the setting is, if your website calls for IE, you can answer it in an IE mode. And so that really old management interface, that really old website will still work. And then they did that because Microsoft saw their tool sets were written for IE and, you couldn't go to Chrome or Firefox and use the tool sets. So this seemed really cool. Hey, you hit something old, every once in a while I haven't, talks about old Equalogic something, and it's really old and it only answered to this, and it's really a pain. So this was Microsoft's solution, great solution. However, the way they get this is there's technically old IE code floating around under Edge. And so here's the latest one where what they did is they triggered the Edge browser to reconfigure in IE mode that exploited the vulnerability that led them in. Now, my advice before, and it's my advice now, is don't go to this screen that I show you and don't allow, right? Most of you don't have Microsoft stuff that needs this management. And those of you that have an IE only interface of something ancient is probably rather minimal. So just go into Edge and tell it don't allow. I believe you can do that programmatically. And if you ever do need it, there's a setting, you can change it, you can do it and put it back. But this concept that IE is the gift that keeps on giving and keeps on having security holes is rather scary. This is like, all right, I give up. One character on a Google Calendar invite delivers a malicious payload. One extra character in an obfuscation. It's like, how do mere humans do any of this, right? We don't. Our users can't be expected. That line of gobbledygook gibberish for any Zoom call, any Google Calendar, Teams. It's like, I have no idea what that is, what it means. All I know, I click on, I in theory get to what I want. So, this came out. And we've had all sorts of weird stuff. We had Microsoft flagging all Google email as spam. We went through that. We had both Microsoft and Google basically allowing things around their OAuth authentication and just delivering mainlining spam into those two systems. It's been really, really bad. And again, layers, that's all I can do. It's like there's no way we're gonna know what this is. It's all I can do. I gotta have layers. Again, Outlook executes arbitrary code. This is craziness. Microsoft is going to bring your personal OneDrive into your M365 OneDrive. And people are petrified that, in terms of creating easy data leaks, right? That you put it in the wrong bucket, that you expose stuff the wrong way. It's madness, but they've announced that they're going to do this. You can read about it there. People are pretty upset about it. Our friends at CISA's crazy. What's going on here is, all these cuts, firing everybody, trying to rehire. It's madness. Basically, they no longer are directly doing anything. They're going to focus on critical infrastructure, the Chinese hacking the water plant thing. Now they're publishing whatever they say on their X, or you could subscribe on email or RSS feed. MITRE is still going to do the CVE. So first it was like they're not doing it, but they're still going to do that. Now, interestingly, for all the chaos that's going on, Amazon and Google and Microsoft, they're all saying they have gotten no reduction in threat intelligence or whatever CISA's been doing, despite all the noise you see in the papers. They're like, nothing has changed for us. So some of that is politics, some of that is probably real. Obviously, this is very real. 19 billion passwords are leaked. Um, um, it's just, you've been hacked. You're out there someplace, go on the dark web, you'll find yourself. VMware is in kind of a really bad sled. Um, there's tons of, this just came out on the 20, tons of different VMware vulnerabilities, some in the wild, some not. Bunch of VMware tools vulnerabilities where you can gain access without credentials to VMs. Big thing, just without thinking, update your VMware tools. Just do that, please. That takes a lot off the playing field. If you're part of our VMware maintenance service, talk to Christina, talk to Evan, figure out what the plan is. If you're not, you got a lot of work to do. If you don't want to do the work, talk to Lisa and she can tell you about these things. Teams is going to block screen capture now. So, you're looking at something, hey, that's the one screen I care about, right? Well, your Teams is going to block that. This is weird. A ransomware attack completely offline using ping. We're running out of time, but you can read about that. Talked about this before, zombie servers. Well, now we got zombie routers, zombie webcams, all this end of life stuff that doesn't get patched anymore, that didn't get removed. When you have end of life stuff you're not using anymore, unplug it minimally, like the power, unplug it, and ideally remove it from your racks. This is becoming a real problem that all this old stuff is becoming proxies. This is really imaginative. Basically, what they do is the attacker changes the system clock time, so expired tokens and expired certificates and whatever line up again and work. Craziness. Shortcut vulnerability. This is madness, right? Unpatched shortcut, and they don't have a patch for this. Basically, they can attack. Big thing, they just patched this, that um, attackers could go into the remote desktop cache and find past successful logins and then use the past successful login successfully on the RDP in order to get into your network. Excuse me. They just patched that up past Tuesday. I've said this forever. Another IPv6 hijack software updates feature. Turn off IPv6. Turn it off programmatically. This is madness. Microsoft Defender XDR, that's the good stuff, right? In your A5 license and maybe your A3 license. All right. They did this false positive where they took all these documents, these confidential documents, and they put them in the public sandbox for analysis. So the XDR, the Microsoft XDR tool, actually exposed all these sensitive private documents to the world. That's a big, big screw up. I think we're almost done here, trying to respect your time. Last time we met, I said Microsoft said on April 20th, they were discontinuing security driver updates and WSSs. And this was the gnashing of teeth. You have to find something else to do. Well, there was so much backlash on that that Microsoft reversed themselves. And they said, nope, okay, we're not doing it. We're still releasing security updates for drivers that are in the Windows Update stack. We're not removing it. You don't have to go do weird stuff. You don't have a big security hole on the side of the boat, which was what was happening. That doesn't change your trajectory that you probably need to move to something else for patching in the long term. But they've said WSSs is fully supported with all features you know and love, or at least tolerate, until through Server 2025 end of life. Server 2025 is the last supported OS. So that's a huge thing. Again, end of life. There's a whole lot of stuff end of life. this is the summer to fix all this stuff. I thought this was kind of humorous. This is the cybersecurity program you want to run, and this is the one you got, right? With the coconuts, due to budget. So this summer you're going to be doing your cloud stuff. Remember though, as you're going into your summer, temporary solutions are generally permanent solutions. So it's summertime. You need to look for those things you were going to get back to and you need to do it. Extra power strips in the closet strung together, strung into UPSs. There's stuff you probably need to address there. I love this. If someone figured out my password, I have to rename my dog. There's truth to that. So anyway, that's it. A couple minutes over. Thank you for your patience. I probably could talk another 2 hours in terms of material. I might, like I said, we might try to do something um, sometime over the summer and it'll get recorded. If you want to contact me, that's how Lisa's going to get you the slides. You want to kind of read what's in my brain, you can go to LinkedIn or the blog. Couple recordings, the MITRE one in terms of the framework and how it's used. The January Tech Talk, our vulnerability source, the lapse that I talked about, one of the SOC service I talked about. So that is what I have. I hope you found it meaningful. If you have questions, now is the time. If not, we'll get you out of here reasonably on time. And I thank you for hanging out with us today, and we'll talk to you over the summer. All right, with that, I'm going to shut it down, and certainly if you have questions, reach out. Thanks. Have a wonderful day.